Hi folks, HR Funk here. With a handgun that is simultaneously familiar and foreign. It's familiar in the sense that it's a Smith & Wesson M&P, and for many years I carried and trained extensively with an M&P pistol. But this one is foreign because unlike those handguns that I had all the training and experience with, this has some differences. What I have here specifically is the Smith & Wesson M&P chambered for the .22 Winchester Magnum rimfire cartridge. And in this video, I'm going to give you a close-up look at this handgun. I'm going to tell you about some of the similarities that it has with those handguns that I used back in the day. And I'm also going to talk about some of the differences, and this design is intriguing. And before the video's all over, we're going to head out to the range and see how it performs. So here we go. As always, we'll start this up-close look at the M&P .22 Magnum the way you bring it home from the store, which is in the box, or in this case, in the case. And if there's any rhyme or reason to which product Smith & Wesson is shipping in a case like this, or the ones that come in a cardboard box, I can't tell what it is. But this one, as you can see, does come in a plastic hard case. When you open it up, we can see it's foam lined. We have the handgun itself packaged in Smith & Wesson's paper. It comes with 2 magazines. Thank you, Smith & Wesson. It has a chamber flag that we see here. And back behind the foam at this part of the case is the owner's manual, warranty paperwork, and of course the obligatory bicycle lock. So I'm going to go ahead and take this pistol out of the case, and then we'll go on with this review. As we get our first up-close look at the M&P .22 Magnum, I want to say a quick thanks to House of Pain Armament for loaning me this handgun. Without their assistance, this video would not be possible. Looking at the M&P .22 Magnum, we can see that outwardly it has more or less the same appearance of the M&Ps that we've known for years and years, but this one sort of looks like it was run over by a steamroller that made it longer and flatter than the M&Ps that we typically see. Turning the pistol around for a starboard side view, you might have also noticed that unlike virtually every other M&P handgun in the line, this one does not have interchangeable back straps. So when I was showing you the contents of the case, you may have noted then that there were no backstrap inserts that accompanied this handgun, and you can see now that there's no reason for there to be because this does not have an interchangeable backstrap system. We'll start our top-down look at the M&P .22 Magnum with the rear sight, which you can see is serrated to keep down on glare, but otherwise has no dots or markings whatsoever. This sight is drift adjustable for windage correction. The front sight is also dovetailed into the slide, so you could make windage corrections with it. There's no means that I can see for an elevation adjustment, however, other than changing out the sights. The front sight has a green fiber optic element that makes it highly visible. It's very easy to pick that up, at least in anything that resembles good light, and I will try to get you a look at the sight picture. So that would be your sight picture if you were shooting the M&P .22 Magnum. The pistol is optics ready, as you see here, and the slide is machined for direct mount of an optic with the Shield RMSC footprint. So this pistol does not have the interchangeable adapter plate system that we've seen with other optic-ready M&P pistols. This one is specifically meant for direct mount of that type of an optic. The top of the slide is also grooved, as you see here, to keep down on glare. And someday I'm going to have to do an experiment to see just how much glare reduction there is with any type of texturing to the top of a slide and just a plain slide. I really never think about that when I'm shooting, so I never notice it, but a lot of companies do this, and off the top of my head, I really just don't know if it makes any difference other than just kind of a nice cosmetic touch. The slide and barrel are finished in Smith & Wesson's Armornite coating, which makes it very corrosion and abrasion resistant. Also, the contours of the slide are very reminiscent of what we've seen with other M&Ps. There are no front slide cocking serrations, but there are adequate rear cocking serrations that you can see here. This pistol is also fairly ambidextrous. At the rear is the ambi thumb safety that you can see. When it is in the up position, that disables the trigger. The down position is the fire position, so that means that it operates in the same manner basically as a 1911 pistol. The slide stop also has levers on both sides, and It seems to release well enough with the lever on the right-hand side. And the magazine catch, which has a textured surface right here, is reversible. So again, that's pretty ambi. The magazine catch is reversible, so it's not totally ambi, but the other controls certainly are. The trigger is one of Smith & Wesson's newer non-hinged versions. You can see it does have the inertial blade safety in the middle of the trigger, and you can also tell by looking at it that it breaks at about 90 degrees, and you see there's a little bit of creep there, just a bit, and then it breaks. I'll have to weigh this to see where it's breaking. It feels a little heavy, but not bad, not a bad trigger pull. Moving on to the frame, we can see at the front of the frame is an accessory rail. There is no texturing really on the trigger guard at all. It is undercut at the rear of the trigger guard to help the shooter get a higher grip on the pistol. The texturing around the circumference of the grip is kind of a medium texturing. This is not nearly as coarse as some of the 2.0 pistols, so I don't know if Smith & Wesson has toned this down on all of their newer M&Ps or if just this one specifically, since it's chambered for the 22 Magnum rather than something that might generate a little bit more recoil. The magazine well is not tapered really at all, and the top of the magazine is somewhat reduced to help it to guide itself into the magazine well. So it seems to work pretty easily. These are poly magazines, and there are witness holes along the side. Each one of these witness holes represents 5 rounds of capacity, and if you do the math, 5 times 6, you'll come up with the total capacity of these magazines. Now, I have noticed that loading the cartridges into the magazine is a little weird, and I think it just has to do with the length of the 22 Magnum cartridges and trying to get them fed underneath these feed lips and slid all the way back to the rear of the magazine. It's possible, and it was not really difficult to load them to full capacity, but it was just a little different. These are sort of a stack and a half magazine, and it seems like the front of these long cartridges really gets to move around quite a bit. And I'll be interested to see when we get out to the range how the functioning works with this magazine, or with these magazines I should say. I've got 3 different types of 22 Magnum ammunition, so we'll be able to test those all out and see what that functioning looks like. Probably the biggest departure in terms of design between this handgun and what I'll call the traditional M&P pistols has to do with the operating system. This is a gas-operated pistol, and there's actually a 2-part barrel. The actual barrel is inside of a sleeve, and it has gas rings. And by the way, I'm not going to disassemble this pistol. There are some other videos out there that demonstrate disassembly and reassembly, and you can see the gas system in those. But when you fire this pistol, gas bleeds off similar to the way that it does in an AR-15 and bears against those gas rings, which pushes the barrel itself, and I'm going to try to do this so you can see it, and it's going to be kind of difficult. There we go. It pushes the barrel back, and I'm going to try to get this so you can see it, that far, and then the barrel is arrested, but that imparts enough inertia to the slide to cause it to move all the way to the rear, extract and eject the fired case, and then with the recoil spring pressure, feed and chamber a new cartridge. So this is very different. It's a gas-operated handgun rather than the Browning tilting barrel design that we see in the other M&P pistols, and that's another reason I'm going to be very interested to see how this thing functions, or maybe I should say how well it functions, when we go out and actually start to shoot it. The other main functional difference between this handgun and others in the M&P line is the fact that this uses an internal hammer and firing pin to facilitate cartridge ignition rather than a striker system. So there are some pretty major functional differences between this and the other M&Ps, but that probably also helps with the fact that this is a rimfire cartridge, and that hammer is going to give a little bit more impact to the cartridge rim than probably would be possible with a striker system, at least one that has anything resembling a decent trigger pull. So let's see where the trigger on the M&P 22 Magnum is breaking. I'm going to give it a little help just depressing the inertial safety there. And that's showing that it broke right at 4 pounds, which surprises me. I thought the trigger felt heavier than that. Let's try it again. And it could be that this roller is rolling down the trigger to the very bottom, and I can't really hold it in the very center, so that might be causing this to look a little bit lighter than it actually feels. That one was just over 3.5 pounds. Let's try one more. And I'm going to try to keep it more in the center of the trigger this time and see if that changes the pull weight that I'm getting. This is going to be hard to do. That's more what I was thinking. 4 pounds, 15 ounces, and it was still moving around a little bit. I thought it felt more like a 5-pound pull, or maybe a little bit more. And I think if I could get this to measure in the very center of the trigger, that's probably more of what we would have been looking at. As it turns out, our 3-pull average is 4 pounds, 10.6 ounces. But again, I think that is highly influenced by the fact that this roller wants to go down to the very bottom of the trigger, which gives it more leverage. The trigger quality itself, as I said, is not bad. I'm feeling just a little bit of creep in there, just a touch. And if you were shooting this thing very quickly, I'm sure you would never notice that at all. And then the trigger breaks. So all in all, I'd give the trigger a solid B, I think. The M&P 22 Magnum is covered by Smith & Wesson's bumper-to-bumper 1-year warranty and its lifetime service contract. It has an MSRP of $649, but as usual with a little bit of shopping, you can typically find it for less than that. So that's going to do it for the up-close shop review of the Smith & Wesson M&P 22 Magnum. Now let's head out to the range and see how it shoots. And here we are in the range with the Smith & Wesson M&P 22 Magnum. And in just a couple minutes, I'm going to start to shoot it. And I'm going to start out with an accuracy test at a distance of 15 yards. I'll be shooting from the bench off of bags. And I've got 3 different types of 22 Magnum ammunition to test out here today. I have some Maxi Mag, and these are 40 grain bullets rated at 1,875 feet per second. I'm sure that's out of a rifle length barrel. I have some Hornady 22 Magnum 30 grain Vmax rounds, and I have some Armscore 40 grain jacketed hollow points. So we'll test all 3 of these for accuracy, and throughout the course of the video, I'll also be testing them for functional reliability. So here we go. And first up is going to be the CCI 40 grain Maxi Mag ammunition. Got 1 round in the chamber. Let's see how it does. As a matter of fact, no, I don't have 1 in the chamber. That round did not chamber. There we go. So, interesting. And there's a malfunction, and this is exactly what I wondered about with these magazines when I was in the shop and I was talking about the fact that the bullet can wander somewhat. I'm going to try to get this where you can see it. That bullet basically moved a little bit out of alignment with the feed ramp, and I don't know if you can see that or not. It's hard for me to see it in the viewfinder as bright as it is out here. But in any case, it did not chamber. Let's see if I can clear it. I've got it seated back against the back of the magazine again. Okay, that time it went into battery. And by the way, I notice as the slide is moving forward and picking up a cartridge, it is pretty sluggish moving it into the chamber. So this could be an issue where the recoil spring could be just a little bit stouter. Have to cease fire, folks. There's a train going by. And I no longer hear the train a-coming. It has rolled around the bend. By the way, that is just an issue with this range. There's a railroad track that runs right next to the range here. And whenever a train goes by, we have to cease fire. So now, back to the test. I've got 3 rounds on target. Or 4. I think I've got 3. I'm going to put 2 more on there. Should have gone down and counted while the train was going. Okay, I think that's 5. Let's go down and take a look at the target. So not a fantastic group with those CCI 40 grain maxi mags. That is about probably 2 inches center to center. Everything is slightly off to the left. So we'll see if that changes when I move to a different type of ammunition or if it stays the same. It's a little bit of an inauspicious start to this test when I had 2 malfunctions with that very first type of ammunition. First was a failure to chamber before I ever started to fire, and then another failure to feed while I was shooting. But we'll also see if that goes away with the other ammunition as we continue with the test. Next up is the Hornady 30 grain Vmax. This is a pointier bullet with that polymer tip, so we'll see if it fares better when it comes to feeding than the CCI load did. There's 5 rounds of the Hornady load. Let's go back down range. So a better group that time and better functioning. All 5 of those shots are in probably just over an inch, maybe 1 1/4 inch, 1 3/8. Still, I am off to the left, so that rear sight appears to need to be drifted a little bit to the right. But at least the group looked better that time around, and we didn't have any malfunctions. So now let's go back and try the Armscore load. And last up is the Armscore 40 grain jacketed hollow point. And this is what I think I would call a semi-jacketed hollow point, because the tip of the bullet itself has exposed lead that forms the hollow point. And this might also be an adventure when it comes to feeding in this pistol. And first round chambered. Let's see what the accuracy looks like. There's 5 rounds. Let's head back down range. So that group is about the same size, maybe a little bit smaller than I got with the CCI loads to begin with. That is in probably more like 1.5 inches, so I guess it is smaller. The group size in order of size goes from the Hornady load, which is the smallest overall 5-shot group, to the CCI load, which is the largest 5-shot group. And at least the last 2 types of ammunition didn't have any type of malfunction. Now, one thing that was different with the CCI load at the very beginning is I had that magazine loaded to full capacity when I started shooting. When I shot these 2 groups, I only had 5 rounds loaded in the magazine. So just to be fair, as I move into the defensive drills, I'm going to load all of those to full capacity so we can see if that functioning stays consistent with the Armscore and the Hornady load, or if we start to see some problems when that magazine spring is under full compression. In an effort to keep my target camera from overheating, I've moved it off to the side of the range into the shade a little bit. That's why you have a little bit different camera angle this time than typically you do when I fire these drills. But I have now loaded this magazine up to full capacity. It is loaded with the Hornady 30 grain Vmax round. So we'll see what happens with the functioning as I start shooting through this drill, which is going to be controlled pairs from a distance of 5 yards. And the first round chambered easily enough. Let's see what happens when I start to shoot. So no problem keeping those rounds center chest from that distance of 5 yards. Again, we see these shots are a little bit to the left. I don't think this is me. I really think that rear sight needs to be drifted a little bit. And as I look at it, I can't really tell anything by looking at it. It might be a little closer to the left. And the front sight looks to be pretty well centered. But as I came up to shoot these drills, I just waited till I saw that big glowing fiber optic front sight, center chest, and pressed the trigger. And again, no problem keeping those shots there. So now let's move back to 7 yards. I'm going to switch over to the Armscore ammunition. Again, I'll have the magazine loaded to full capacity. And from 7 yards, I'll be shooting failure drills, which is 2 shots to the body and 1 shot to the head. And we'll see what happens from there. So failure drills from a distance of 7 yards, this time with the Armscore 40 grain jacketed hollow points. Again, I've got the magazine loaded to full capacity. Let's see what happens. And those shots are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the body. Again, having a tendency to drift to the left. The headshots are all good. No problem at all with the functioning, even with a full magazine with that Armscore ammunition. Now, one thing that did happen that time, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see it in the video or not, but I think it was the very first shot that I fired. I got a spray of unburned powder and or gas or debris back into my face. I'm glad I was wearing glasses because otherwise that might have caused me some eye problems. But I don't know if that's something to do with the ammunition, something to do with this pistol. It does direct the gas backward from the barrel and it vents out of that barrel when it's open. So I don't know if I just got a face full of that or what, but I didn't like it too well. So I'm set up at a distance of 15 yards, and again, I've got the magazine fully loaded with that CCI Maxi Mag ammunition that caused the malfunctions at the beginning of the test. And I'm going to fire 5 shots from here into the body, and after I finish that, I'm going to move down lower into the body and fire out the remainder of the magazine because I want to test the functioning through the entire ammunition column. So let's see how it goes. Well, apparently it did not feed a round of ammunition. So let me see if I can clear this. Already again, we're having problems with the CCI Maxi Mags. So I'm not having high hopes. Okay, I think it chambered that time. Let's find out. Okay, now I'm going to move down lower. Okay, so other than that bobble when I was trying to chamber the first cartridge, it seemed to run fine after that. Now I'm going to move back to 25 yards and again try for a little bit more accuracy. I guess before I go back to 25 yards, it'd be a good idea to take a look at my 15-yard group. And this is a pretty darn good group from 15 yards. That's pretty well centered right there for those 5 shots. It's a little high, but I've got 3 out of the 4 on the aorta, 1 of them in the heart, and 1 of them right there in the right lung, so I'm not going to complain too much about that. Let's see what happens at 25 yards. So here we go with 5 shots from 25 yards. Let's see what happens. Oh, this is the Hornady 30 grain Vmax, by the way. think that fourth shot drifted to the left a little bit. I saw the front sight move as I squeezed the trigger, but let's go down range and see where the rest of them are. And of course, when I got down here, I realized I had not turned on my target camera. So all you saw that time was just me shooting, but those shots are 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I saw one of these definitely drift to the left as I was shooting, so it might have happened, probably did happen twice. All in all, from 25 yards, that's about a 4-inch group or thereabouts. So not bad accuracy from 25 yards, but all the way through this test, these shots have been drifting to the left. That could be me. I don't think it's me. Now the saving grace for this pistol is it is optics ready. So with an optics, this is easily corrected, and it would probably also improve this longer range accuracy some. But now it's time for the final test, and that's to find out if the M&P 22 Magnum is a 7-yard tack driver. I'm going to put a tack in the target, load 3 rounds in the magazine, and let's see what happens. So here we go. Is the M&P 22 Magnum a 7-yard tack driver? And I'm using that Hornady Vmax ammunition because that seemed to be the most accurate ammunition that I've used in this handgun. So let's see what happens on the tack test. Little high on the first shot. Got to bring it down just a touch. And I don't see the second hole, so I'm not sure. Maybe that went through the same one as the first shot. So I need to bring it down a little bit more. One more shot. Is it a tack driver? No, I brought it down too much that time. So the M&P 22 Magnum is not a 7-yard tack driver. And now I see that second hole. Had I realized that was that low the second time around, instead of going even lower for the next shot, I'd have gone a little bit higher. But my fault. Even so, not a tack driver today. Probably, in all honesty, the pistol's a tack driver. I'm just not today. So, final thoughts on the Smith & Wesson M&P 22 Magnum. This pistol has some nice features. The optic front sight, or excuse me, the fiber optic front sight is nice. The optic ready platform is nice. Overall, it doesn't feel too bad. I'm not wild about the trigger. As I said back in the shop, it really does feel heavy. And when I was shooting it out here, basically the entire time, especially when I was trying to make very precise shots, I felt like I was working against that trigger some. And Smith & Wesson is very proud of these new triggers that they've developed, and they swear up and down that they feel better than the older M&P triggers. All I can say is I still prefer the trigger on my 2007 vintage M&P 40 that I carried for years and years and years. Be that as it may, I think if I'm being brutally honest, I'm not wild about this pistol for a couple of reasons. And I think one of the reasons is I'm not sure what I would use it for. For defensive purposes, I'm a little leery of the functional reliability. Anytime we have a rimmed cartridge that's being fed through a semi-auto system, that's kind of a challenge to make it all work just right. And when that cartridge is as long and skinny as the 22 Magnum, that just sort of exacerbates the problem. So even though it ran 100% with the Armscore ammunition and with the Hornady ammunition, in the back of my mind would always be this concern that maybe the next time I squeeze the trigger is going to be the time that that top cartridge moved a little bit in the magazine and it doesn't feed quite right. So I don't particularly care for this for defensive use. Plus, with a 22 Magnum, in a handgun length barrel, we're losing a lot of velocity and a lot of oomph compared to what we'd get with a rifle length barrel. So I just don't feel warm and fuzzy about the idea of this handgun for defensive use. For something like plinking or backyard pest control or something like that, the 22 Magnum ammunition is going to be a step up in power from 22 rimfire, At the same time, it's going to be a considerable step up in ammunition cost, and for most of my backyard pests, I've been able to control them for years and years and years with a 22 rimfire, either a semi-auto or some other firearm that chambers that cartridge. So I don't know that it's the best firearm for something like that. Now, if you're somebody who just likes the 22 Magnum cartridge and that's what you want to use and you want to fire it out of a semi-automatic handgun, then this is probably a good option for that. Off the top of my head, and I'm sure they're out there, I'm going to get bombarded in the comments, but I can't think of another manufacturer. Does Valter make a semi-auto 22 Magnum? I think they do. And that might be the only other 22 Magnum semi-auto handgun I can think of in current manufacture. And like I said, there might be other ones out there I'm just not thinking of, but there's not a lot of them. By comparison, there are many, many, many more that are chambered for the 22 long rifle cartridge. And I think that would just be my preference. Like I said, if you're someone who just likes the 22 Magnum, then maybe this is the handgun for you. But I think I'll be taking this back to House of Pain with my thanks for loaning it to me for this video. And that's probably going to be the last time I shoot one of these. In any case, that's the video for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments, as always, make sure you forward those to me. Remember, if you purchase anything from Optics Planet, be sure to use my discount code, which is... And if you use that discount code, it's good for 7% off your purchase from Optics Planet. And if you go to House of Pain, either House of Pain Armament or House of Pain Munitions, you can use my discount code there, which is HRFUNK, and that'll save you some money off your purchase from House of Pain. And lastly, don't forget the Target sponsor, folks. Go to Target's online, check out their inventory, and see if they have anything that's going to meet your Target needs. See you next time, and until then, good shooting. Bye-bye.